I've definitely done a lot of product management work, but I've never actually held a PM title. What do I do? How do I get a job as a product manager? Quite a lot of PMs don't even know that they're PMs for a long part of their career, present company included, and a lot of the folks that are joining PCA. Product managers are basically business builders, kind of synonymous to entrepreneurs. They can come from any background. They can come from any related roles like program management or data analysts or project managers or producers or directors, game directors in the video game industry. Or they can be any kind of organizational role or any kind of marketing role or sales role or business related role, because really at the end of the day, it's just getting the customer to be in a better position than they were and generating revenue or results for the business. There's, as you can imagine, a lot of different roles that have interaction with those two areas, customers and the business. What I'm trying to say is basically anyone can be a PM. The important thing is, are you interested in these areas? Bringing different groups of people together in order to service the customer, solve their problem, make money for the business. If you are, if that's your passion, you're excited about doing that, building it, doing it at greater and greater scale, then product management is exactly for you. So a lot of folks have that background. They do product work, but you look back at your titles and roles and you don't see the name product manager in there. You see a lot of different things, business analyst, product analyst, sales, whatever the case may be, but you want to apply for product manager roles. And if you apply just naming your roles as you held them, the titles as you held them, you're probably not going to get any callbacks because the recruiters and hiring managers are highly sensitive for the name product manager. Otherwise, they just sort of gloss over and ignore the resume. A lot of times, we're trying to optimize ultimately for being seen and being recognized and the ability to actually read deeper in the resume to show, yes, I have worked with users. Yes, I have delivered revenue for the business. But if no one will get there because they've made a snap decision that you don't have a product manager background, then they're never going to find out that you had all this impact on the business or impact on the customers and that you actually could be a good fit for the product manager role. So what do we do in this case? Usually inside PCA, I will ask you the following question. In this role, take your most recent role. Have you done product management work? And if you don't understand what product management work is, I'm going to give you some examples. Figuring out what to build or how to change the business or the product offerings. Talking with customers. Looking at data. Figuring out the way that customers use your product or figuring out the business model for how you should price your offering, maybe expanding the business, maybe launching something new, maybe creating a marketing campaign, growing the underlying audience or the business in some way. If you've done that, then that's product management work. So the first question is, have you done product management work? If the answer is yes, I've done product management work, then in my eyes, you've held the product manager title. You don't need someone to bestow this thing upon you in order for you to say, I was a product manager. You just need to do the things that a product manager is supposed to do. So if you did those things, then you are a product manager. Congratulations. And then I would say, if you did the work of a product manager, can you add the title product manager after your official title? Or better yet, before your official title. I don't want you to misrepresent yourself. I never want us to tell something that's not the truth. But if you've done the product management work and the only reason you don't have the product manager title is because in your company they call it product owner, allow me to give you the permission to add that title to yourself. Grant yourself that title. Why not? As long as you did the work. I prefer product manager, comma, your actual title. That is easier and better for recruiters. They're looking and scanning at your resume. If you can't do that, at least put it comma after. And if you can't do that, then at least just put the word product in there somewhere so that the recruiter, hiring manager, anyone reading the resume has a chance to even understand that you did product related work. So that's the first hurdle. That's the resume hurdle. The second hurdle you're going to encounter is during conversations. In a recruiter screen, typically they're going to try to assess, hey, it looks like you have the title product owner or data analyst and a product manager. Can you tell me what you did? Your job is to talk less about the title, more about the work itself. You don't want to defend yourself. Oh no, I really was a product manager. Not like that. You want to instead talk about the work. What did you do? So when you're asked, hey, can you explain this role that you held here? It says product analyst, product manager. Can you tell me what that's about? That doesn't mean defend your product manager role or title. It means literally explain the product management work that you did there. And hopefully you're going to align it to the stuff that they actually call out in the job description. So you're actually helping the recruiter along. Because remember, in a recruiting screening conversation, your job is just not to pop off any red flags, and ideally it's to actually help solve the recruiter's problem. If you're asked anything about, can you give me more detail, or can you explain exactly what this can you explain exactly what this role was, you can just talk about the work. Don't mention the title. If someone asks specifically about the title, hey, were you a product analyst or a product manager? This is where I recommend saying, I was doing the work of a product manager. Here is what I was doing. Again, move the conversation back to the thing that matters. This is frankly going to be the biggest filter for you. As long as you are stuck, quote unquote, with those roles that are not product manager, the more of them you have on your resume, the more you're setting yourself back and not giving yourself an opportunity to compete with these other product managers who have held official titles. Just because some companies are more advanced from a product management perspective, they understand the role, and other companies, especially legacy corporations, they're still coming around. They have their own titles, VP of this and VP of that. What we want, especially in the top geographies, especially for the top tech companies, the words product manager. Now, it's very well understood, very well paid, and that's what we want, especially if you love product and you love building. If you're a PM, you want to know which companies and levels you should apply for, or which seniority, then this video is for you. Let me start out by saying that a lot of the stuff on the job description level is pretty made up and arbitrary. There's no real minimum years of experience you should have on anything. It really all depends on whether you understand the thing, whether you've done the thing before. But beyond that, people are pretty much guessing. It's just sort of a made up little gate to stop the majority of people from applying. Actually, this is the first filter that people hit when they start browsing for jobs. This one asks for 3 years, this one for 5, this one for 10. What do I actually do? So for now, let's just basically ignore the years experience and instead focus on what the job actually wants us to do. If you imagine the hiring manager for most of these roles these days, they're just going to ask ChatGPT to create a job description based on a few prompts that they give it. Oh, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I think they're going to be doing. Could you please put together a job description? And then they'll make up a year's experience number and put it on the job. But when they think about the level that they put for the job description, it is based on an internal set of rubrics of how each company thinks about leveling. And mainly that has to do with a few things. It has to do with the scope. How big is this thing that you're going to be working on? How important it is to the company, how broad it is, and how many other orgs and teams it touches. Pretty much everything that you think about in a level fits into those three criteria. If you're working on product features, small features, then big features, then maybe product lines, you can see how the level will change depending on the scope of work you take on. So the scope is a real part of the leveling selection. Leadership and people management is another true aspect of the level. At level 4, junior, you're going to be managing cross-functionally and your own direct different groups of people. That is also a true reality, a true requirement. If you've never managed 5 or 10 or 20 people before, it's going to be hard for you to fit into this particular role. And finally, the strategy piece, if you primarily work on launching, executing day-to-day things, as opposed to thinking about quarterly roadmaps or annual roadmaps or bringing big groups of people and big orgs together to launch something really big across the whole company, that is also going to be a real responsibility area and a real determinant in the level of the position. Those three buckets are real years of experience, and pretty much everything in the job description is not that important. So when you're looking at these jobs, try to find the three most important elements that you think the hiring manager put in there, and then try to rank these jobs in those three buckets. How much is it? What's the scope? Feature level, product level, company level? What is the leadership component? Do you lead cross-functional teams? Are you just working by yourself? Or are you leading a group of 5 or 7? And then the third component is strategy. How much in there is about doing something across a long time horizon or across multiple orgs? Or is it just a relatively small, relatively tactical area of responsibility? As you think about these three buckets, think also about your own career. How much have you done in each of these three areas? And then you can kind of develop stretch opportunities for yourself based on your experience, but you largely understand that the work you've done in the past will determine how you're perceived by the hiring manager or recruiter, because if you've done this before, that's the best determinant that you're going to be successful again. That's a little bit about the leveling component. Now, different companies will have different names for it. They're going to call it lead PM or staff PM or senior PM or group or principal. Ignore that for the most part. You can find out how the bigger companies that have a little bit of a more well-defined rubric, you can find out how they think about it. But for most companies, it doesn't necessarily have a rhyme or a reason to it. You just have to look at the job description and figure out what they're trying to tell you the scope and the area of responsibility, the management leadership is going to be. And based on that, figure out if you're a good fit or not. So you have to make sure you get calibrated, get a second opinion on this, preferably someone that understands what they're doing or has been involved in coaching and product management, or even at least someone that has just product management experience, preferably senior. Once you get that, combine that with your self-assessment, and you have an idea of which roles from a leveling perspective you can apply for. Remember, you can stretch a little bit. If you've done a certain amount of people management work and this role in particular asks for maybe a little bit more of people management, it doesn't matter. Look at the job description, not the title, not the number of years experience. Now let's talk about the company selection. Let's talk about companies in a few broad buckets. The first one is your big tech companies. These are the publicly traded companies. There's maybe 100 or 200 of them. You know of them. You use their products pretty much every day, whether they're B2B or B2C, doesn't matter. Pretty much everybody wants to work for them. That's the first bucket. Second bucket are your up-and-coming startups. These are late-stage startups. Usually, I'm talking Stripe. These are companies that you might not even think of them as startups because they've been around for so long, 10 years or more. They're late-stage startup. They're not publicly traded yet. It's a bit of a separate bucket because the compensation there is not quite where it needs to be. They're still a little bit more nimble, not quite as nimble as a startup, but not as slow as some of the entrenched top tech companies. The third bucket are your mid-stage or early stage startups. Primarily mid-stage, I'm talking about companies that have found product market fit. Instead of saying early stage and mid-stage, let me just say pre-product market fit, post-product market fit. And just to remind you, product market fit means people want your products or services, and you don't have to spend most of your time trying to convince them to buy your stuff. There could be still an issue of growth and scaling, but at least you're not trying to solve a problem of what do we sell? What problem do we actually solve? Pretty much all the companies you're going to be applying to will fall somewhere in those four buckets. So how do you think about where you should apply? Let's think about what is important for you and what is important for those companies, because we've got to find the sweet spot between those two in order to facilitate a match. So what's important for you? If you're planning to build a long and successful and financially rewarding product career, then you do want to work in the top tech companies at least for a while. You need to get the recognizable tech names, you need to get the opportunities that they open up, and frankly, you need the compensation because they just pay more than anyone else and more than you can likely make by yourself, even if you do a successful startup. But also you can pretty much travel anywhere you want. You can get stronger interest from late stage startup like Stripe. You can get stronger interest from post product market fit startups, and you may get stronger interest from pre product market fit startups. But they sometimes think that top tech PMs are too used to building slowly and they can't execute fast enough, and so they may not be particularly excited about you if you've got top tech on your resume. But everybody else in groups 2 and 3 are going to be more excited, so you have a lot of opportunities to choose from there. If you're in this camp and you're not necessarily targeting compensation, again, because once you get into the bucket of mercenary PM work where you're trying to get more and more compensation each time, it's hard to get away from the top tech companies. But assuming compensation is not number one most important thing for you, then you could target to go to a smaller company like those in buckets 2 or 3 and then pick up additional experience that you may not have had. For instance, strategic experience or leadership, people management experience. That could be harder to get, but your recognizable names could allow you to step in there and kind of punch above your weight a little bit and maybe apply for a position which calls for people management, but you don't have that experience exactly, but you've got big tech recognizable names in there so you can get your foot in the door and then maybe make a case for being able to take on those additional responsibilities. And then finally, if you're early career, then really you should be targeting everyone, but realistically, if you have no recognizable names, expect to land somewhere in those buckets number 3 or 4, pre or post product market fit startups, and use them to rapidly develop your skill set of experience in a particular vertical or industry, or actually just build out your resume from an impact perspective. Impactful bullets, lots of dollars, lots of usage, lots of experiments, lots of launches, things like that. So it all really depends on where you are that will determine what your top picks are. Wherever you are, I do recommend keeping your options pretty open and just scanning every day for the opportunities that come up. You never really know until you have that recruiter conversation of what the needs are, what the specifics are, and where there may be an opportunity for you to advance your career and work with some interesting companies. Now we get to the final point, which is what those companies are looking for. If you're a top tech recruiter or hiring manager, primarily you're looking for proven experience. And that usually means other recognizable top tech names. That's going to be your biggest marker of success. And after that, of course, relevant experience, relevant skill set. You've done this thing, you know how to do this thing. If instead you're a late stage company recruiter or hiring manager, you don't necessarily care about the recognizable names. You care primarily about the thing that is happening. So you care about impactful up and comers. So that's what you're going to optimize for. Of course, recognizable names don't hurt here either, but that's not the only thing you're going to look for. You're really going to look for that domain expertise and experience around that problem, the core problem that you have. And then when you go to bucket 3 and bucket 4, if you're a pre or post product market fit recruiter, really you're just looking for people that execute. Enthusiastic, excited product managers that just have an affinity for execution. So in that respect, your tenacity will determine to a large extent how many recruiters from those buckets 3 and 4, pre and post product market fit, small startups, you can actually speak to. If you're looking for your next PM role, the hardest thing is doing it on your own. Inside PCA, we help product managers looking for the next role, and 70% of PCA members say the most important thing in this whole process is their CSM, their customer success manager. That is their dedicated accountability, coaching, training partner inside PCA. Now, every PCA member will join a Slack channel with me, the head coach, the CSM, and a few other supporting folks just to be a part of your overall coaching support group. But the day-to-day accountability, coaching, and guidance is provided by your CSM. The difference between looking for work by yourself with no one really to speak to except maybe your spouse or a good friend of yours who's at this point really tired of hearing it, you need a dedicated partner. If you want to reach great career heights, you really need to have a support system. What does the CSM actually provide that's so magical inside PCA? The first thing is accountability. You need someone with whom you can meet, with whom you can discuss your progress, with whom you can share your accountability stats. How many applications did you make? How many emails did you send? How many messages? Did you revise your resume? Did you revise your LinkedIn? You need someone who can provide accountability during this time to tell you that, yes, I can see you. You've done this thing. You've taken the right action. If we just keep taking these actions, we are going to have success on the other side. It can be quite a lonely space, and I totally understand how debilitating it can be to be on your own and not having anybody to check in with. So on the accountability side, it's a big element of it. But the flip side of it is the support. Accountability is one side, but if you're doing the wrong things, you're taking the wrong actions, accountability in a way doesn't matter because you're rowing in the wrong direction. Case in point on this, if you're writing emails that are too long, or you're taking too long to customize your resume, or you're optimizing for the wrong companies, or you're doing a myriad of the things that you need to do wrong along the way, remember, PCA is not just to land your next job, but it's also to have a long-term, fulfilling, successful, financially rewarding product career. So we want to work with you 10, 20 years over a long time horizon. We want to help you get the next role, and then we want to make you be successful in that role and enable you to reach the heights that we think you can reach. The next thing is knowing when to refer you out to specialists, so to speak. Inside PCA, we've got different coaches that are focusing on different aspects of the preparation. Primarily, we're talking about the job search process, which includes getting callbacks, getting through your interviews, and then negotiating your offer. But of course, there's so much more that is within that and then after that. But you need to know when you should speak with a networking specialist or a recruiting specialist or a resume specialist. And so the CSM, Customer Success Manager inside PCA, will guide our members along and tell them, you should do this. You should go to this lecture. You should have a one-on-one with this person. You should go to Alex's office hours, happen every week, or any of the other resources that we have inside PCA or the ones that we can create based on the need. And then finally, the mental support. Now, of course, you should have a good, strong support network anytime you're going through a difficult period, such as a protracted job search. We know how exhausting it can be. We know how demotivating it can be. You should have a strong support network. But it's one thing to have a support network of your friends and family, and another one of a team that is led by your customer success manager, your CSM, that is only focused on the work. So we want to support you through the difficult process, and we completely have your back on this because our goals are 100% aligned with yours in the long term. Sometimes that means telling you to take a few days off. Other times it means telling you to persevere through adversity. Other times yet, it's telling you that there is nothing that you could have done to influence a certain outcome. You know, sometimes how we think about, hey, should I have done this? Should I have not done this? Is it this mistake I made? Is it that mistake? Sometimes you need a person in your corner to tell you when it was actually out of your hands the whole time. Or maybe it's an imposter syndrome situation where you're really not valuing yourself enough. It could be any number of these things. Let's call this the endurance training. We often say that a job search is like a marathon. You should not think of it as running a sprint. This is why you're being proactive. This is why you're building a meaningful product career where you can be productive, you can be happy, you can be well compensated. And it is a time that product managers can do all that. So if you're a PM who's looking for your next role, please consider speaking with our team about potentially joining PCA. You can find the link in the description. Thanks very much. I'll see you next time.